So hello, good afternoon everyone. So welcome to the AFour System Community Edition program. So today we'll be introducing you to the network attached storage. So quick recap what we have seen last time in the last session. So last time we started with the Linux fundamentals, then we touched base on the file system. So this session we'll be moving ahead and we'll be covering network attached storage. So basically we'll be seeing the basic architecture of a NAS and then the various protocols like CIFS, NFS, and their workings in this session. So I have Bhagirath and Meenu along with me. So they'll be so I'll hand over to them and they'll be taking you to this NAS introduction session. Thank you.
Hello everyone. So this is Bhagirath and I have Meenu with me. We'll be taking you through a webinar of NAS introduction. So here are a few things about who should attend the webinar, who can be part of this community, and what can you expect out of this webinar. Okay. So we'll be having a webinar for network attached storage, which is NAS, and we'll go into the details of architecture and protocols as NFS and CIFS. Okay, so here are the topics for today's webinar. We'll be going through storage basics. We'll go through what is NAS. We'll we'll learn what are the different protocols. So we'll cover network file system, also known as NFS, and common internet file system, also known as CIFS. Okay, we'll also go through different network topologies. I mean, while going through this storage basics. Okay, so what is storage basics? It's basically a place where we keep our data into electromagnetic format, right? So, and why is basically so that we can access this data using computers, right? And it cannot be at one place. So due to this exponential growth of the data, it is important to have this data available all the time to maintain the integrity of this data and as well as protect this data in an economical manner, right? So, and then why we need this particular data, right? As we see nowadays, the humongous amount of data is being created every day. We need to have this data stored in an economical manner where our resources are keep on increasing at a higher rate, and it's not feasible and economical to keep this data at a standalone server, right? So we should have some solution to it where we can have this data at non-centralized location, but at the same time it should be accessed. It should be accessible throughout the network at different places. So it could be in the same city at different office locations. It is possible that you have multiple geographical locations and you want to access that particular data, right? So these are the basics. Now we'll go through what are the different types of networks that exist on the in the industry, right? So here are few LAN, MAN, and WAN. These are the basic types of networks. LAN is basically that connects network devices over relatively short distances, right? So you can have LAN which is present inside your building or a group of buildings which are not at a very distant places, right? And your internet, your different computer systems or network connected devices will be accessed over this network. So that's LAN for us. Now, what is WAN is basically it's a geographical dispersed collection of LANs. So a network device, which is called as router, it basically connect these different LANs to make it into a WAN network. Okay. So in IP networking, the router is a very important part, which basically connects these different LANs. Okay, and LAN and WAN addresses basically. Okay? Now, MAN is basically a network that is spanning a physical area larger than LAN but smaller than WAN. So it's basically it's a network that is uh, bigger than LAN and smaller than WAN. So it could be operated by an entity such as government bodies, municipal corporations, or even the large IT or different type of corporations where they actually want to have their data be accessed in the same city but at different office locations. So that's MAN for us. So these are the two, apart from these three, there are these two types of networks, internet and intranet. It's something that we are familiar and we use into our day-to-day lives, right? So internet is something that we use in our day-to-day lives. So internet basically is a system that is of linked networks, and they have the scope of complete world, right? So it basically facilitates the data communication from any part of the world to any part of the world, right? And it uses, you can basically access this data over different types of protocols, and you use it for different types of services. So service, something as a SaaS service where you try to log in remotely to access a service, right? You use protocols such as HTTP or HTTPS. Then you have a file transfer where you actually want to copy a file from your machine to a server, or to copy a machine from a remote server to your server, download basically. We use FTP or SFTP protocols. Then you have electronic email systems where you use SMTP protocols, and then World Wide Web and some news groups. So these are basically some protocols and some operations that you actually perform over internet. And for internet, your scope will be throughout the world. You can access the data anywhere depending on what are the things that you actually want to expose to the outer world. So that's internet. Uh, exactly opposite to this comes intranet, where an organization may decide to have uh, its own data not exposed to the outer world, but still they want to access this data on geographically diverse locations. So it is possible that an IT company or a mechanical company have their offices at multiple locations in the world, but they still want to access their employees' data or uh, their manufacturing data or their software data throughout throughout the world and at all the locations, but they don't want to expose this data to external world. So they create an infrastructure called intranet, where only the user from inside the organization will be able to access this particular data. Okay. Now we are moving to NAS. Okay. So I'll just hand it over to. Okay. So till this point, anybody has any questions? Okay. So I'll just hand this over to Meenu for the next part of the webinar. Okay.
Hi everyone. So NAS, network attached storage, is basically a file level computer data storage server connected to a computer network, providing data access to a heterogeneous group of clients. It is in network attached, there are also other storage solutions like SAN and DES. We will cover in the later part of the later or another session in the webinar. In this, we are only covering the network attached storage. And NAS provides a file level access using CIFS and NFS protocols. So what happens, like in NAS, it's a kind of client server architecture. Data is stored in a server in one location, and the clients can access the storage in a form of file or folder over the internet. And the protocol can be CIFS and NFS. Also, the file system is managed by the server. So both storage and file system in a NAS solution is managed by the NAS server. So this diagram explains the entire architecture for the network attached storage. The objective storage nodes are connected to the NAS storage server via a switch, and the client connect to NAS storage server over the internet. The data is sent from NAS server to client in the form of TCP. TCP basically creates a packet which has the data, and it sends the data over the internet. The main difference between a server which has the NAS and the general purpose storage server is that NAS uses only the optimal set of services. Like it only serves two type of requests. One is data sharing, data storage, and other is file sharing. However, the general purpose storage server will serve the multiple requests. So if the number of requests are lesser, then of course the NAS is going to be a better solution than the general purpose storage server. So one of the protocol of the NAS is a network file system, that is NFS. NFS is basically a distributed file system protocol. It was developed by Sun Microsystem. It allows a user on a client computer to access a file over a network, much like it's placed on a local storage. NFS most of the time used in the Unix or Linux system. NFS is built on top of ONC RPC system. RPC's remote procedure calls are inter-process communication, processes communication skills, and here the RPC can communicate with each other just like two nodes communicate with each other. So for using the NAS file or folder on a client, we have to perform some actions. Like first step is to create and export at the server with the provided permission to the Linux client. For that, there is a etc export file where we have to put the entry for particular client with the given permission. Permission can be like root squash or read write or read only kind of permissions we provide for the Linux client. For that, we can use exportfs-p command available on the NAS server. Then we have to run the mount command on the client, where we specify the options used in the mount, like which version we are using. Then it's a hard mount or soft mount. These kind of options we provide in the mount command. Then we will give server address and the path of the export and a mount point. Mount point is just a directory where this folder or volume provided by the NAS solution will be mounted, and we will be doing read or write operation or any IO on that mount path. Once a request from the client goes to server checks in its export whether the requested client has the proper permission to mount the given path. If the permission is given in etc export file or export fs, then the client will provide NFS OK, and then then the client will have the mount path, and the server and the folder can be accessed on the mount point. The same way. So any questions on the NFS file system? Okay. The next protocol we use is the Common Internet File System. It's basically a file sharing protocol mostly used in the Windows environment. It uses server message block. CIFS is built on top of the SMB protocol, where the data is transmitted in the form of the message blocks. In CIFS environment, any application that process network IO can access or modify or use the files or the directories on the local system as well as the remote server. So how we configure the server, and it creates a CIFS is like that. First, we have to create or add a CIFS share on the NAS solution. For that, there are CIFS share. Then we have to add the share path name, and if we want to give the comment or any other permissions, just like in the NFS, like read only or read write, then we have to map the share on the client. We can do it in two ways. First is to do the command prompt, like we can run the net use command and the drive where we want to map the storage, then the server address and share name. Persistent, we can provide the option as yes, if we reboot the client, then mount will be present. Other option is to do it with the computer property. We can map a drive with the same way as we normally map the drives, with giving the server address and the share name. So in this way, we can access the folder or export provided by the NAS solution in the Windows environment. So any question on the CIFS file system protocol? So as a exercise of this webinar, you can basically perform some activity like set up a local NAS server using FreeNAS or any other open source NAS solution. Then create an export on the NAS solution and mount that export on any client using NFS protocol. The other assignment is to set up a local NAS server using any open source NAS solution and mount the export using CIFS protocol. For both the assignment, also perform some action on the exported mounts, like create sparse file, create normal file, directories, special files, etc. Also try mounting with different user permissions while creating NAS share, and mount it with hard or soft mount, different permissions, different security options available like Kerberos or system security or normal security. So try mount with different combinations available in NAS. Also try to read about the NAS solution provided by the different vendors like NetApp, EMC Square, Stellus. NetApp is a solution which provides basically CIFS, NFS both at a time. Also search some content related to cloud NAS and understand the difference between the local on-prem NAS and the cloud NAS. So any questions regarding the webinar?
Okay, so yeah, so that was a very good session. Thanks, Vinu. Thanks, Bhagirath. So request to attendees, please try these hands-on assignments and do mail us at learning@afour.com. And even if you don't have any questions on top of your mind as of now, do feel free to write to us in case of any questions related to this NAS session we conducted today. Be it for NFS or CIFS or whatever queries you have, please do write us on the given email address on the screen, that is learning@afour.com. I think I'll wait for a minute. Maybe if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take it right now. Or like I said, you can always write us on the email address given on your screen. So I think that's all from our side in today's session. All right. Have a good day, guys. Bye.